All right, welcome to Redneck Reviews, where friendship and free labor mean the same thing.
Oh, that's going in. I'll keep that. Welcome back to Redneck Reviews. Today we've got the Indian Chief Dark Horse. Roll the intro.
Not the intro. Roll the clips.
An intro.
This is the intro.
This is the pre-intro. Roll the channel thing. I can see a booster fan.
I feel like Rocky.
Oh, it's way deeper than I thought it was.
Oh, damn.
Miata. 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 Got an FC1 pulling up behind us.
Do we?
Yep.
This thing is smooth as butter. Yeah, the suspension is a little bit on the soft side. It could be a hair stiffer, especially because you don't have a whole lot of travel in the rear with the stock suspension. Now the Chief Sport, I want to say the Chief Sport has piggyback shocks in the rear and inverted fronts.
Yep.
So it has the extra suspension. I think it's got a hair more ground clearance. So they fixed that.
Yeah.
Another thing people complain about is this only has the single disc up front. The Chief Sport has dual disc Brembos. So
Well, genuinely, I will say this though. The brakes on it are fantastic, even though it is that single.
I never need to use more than one finger on the front brake to slow it down, even when I'm hauling the ass.
Yeah, even if you have to stop in an emergency, it doesn't take much, and it stops the bike on a dime. I mean, it's fantastic.
The ABS is phenomenal. It's not too intrusive.
No, not at all.
I do wish I could turn off rear ABS though. That should be an option.
Yeah.
This bike has a very playful nature, and it would be nice to be able to skid the ass end in a little bit. Brother! Oh, that was a Honda in the front. I really wish they'd make a different version of the Chief Sport, because the Chief Sport, it comes with that weird looking bikini fairing up front that's kind of popular right now.
Yeah.
I prefer the strip back, more muscle bike look
I agree.
with the lower bar, because the Chief Sport, it comes with a slightly narrower drag bar. It's a high bar, so your hands are more up here and in a little bit more. I do prefer the lower handlebar, nice wide bar, but it'd be nice if I had the inverted forks, those shocks with the low bar. Now I could just buy a Chief Sport and do that to it. It'd be nice to have that as an option from the factory.
Well, see, as far as looks go, though, you can't beat that bike.
Exactly.
It looks so good.
And I think just having the piggyback shocks and the inverted forks up front with the Brembos would just be that much better as far as aesthetics. If they came out with that, I would buy one.
Oh, yeah.
Just the Chief Sport without the bikini fairing and the low drag bar. This nice wide drag bar they've got on this.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'd have to get one. I do really like what Indian does with the squared off tank, especially the Scouts. I'm not a fan of the newer Scouts. I don't know if the design's going to grow on me. I think the exhaust on them looks a little weird, and the engine doesn't look nearly as good as the old one. That's one of the big features of the aesthetic on this thing. It's just all motor. Those big air-cooled fins look great.
Yep.
This has got to be, without question, one of the best looking bikes ever made.
Hands down. Especially as far as muscle bikes go, it's top tier, no doubt.
Yeah, the proportions are just perfect. I like the nice minimalistic cockpit we got going on. Once you get used to where all the buttons are, it's pretty intuitive. I do wish cruise control was on the left though. It's nice to be able to control that. with the left hand, because that way you don't have to have a hand on the right bar. I can see why they put the cruise control on the right, because there's a lot of buttons over here.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your buttons to control your music, a lot of screen displays, all of that. But it is a very nice minimalistic dash with it still being touchscreen. That was a Chief Sport. They did a really good job of keeping the weight low in the frame. It just, it's so effortless. You don't expect a cruiser that weighs 650 pounds to flick into a corner like this. You could take it to the pegs so easily. I've ridden other cruisers and this is, it doesn't make sense. It shouldn't feel this light. That V-Star 1100, the V-Star felt so much heavier than this bike, and it was lighter. Now, I will say I don't think it needs more power from the factory. It's pretty good where it's at. It's that perfect range where I don't immediately want to just throw more power at this engine. Then again, it'll do a rolling burnout through 4th gear without touching the front brake. It's pretty well off on power.
As far as that bike's concerned, I would never even think about doing anything to add power because I think it's perfect right where it's at.
Yeah, it doesn't need more. I think numbers are somewhere in that like 95 sub 100 horsepower range, 120 foot-pounds of torque, which
I'll tell you,
is right around the similar numbers as the Yamaha Raiders, which the Raiders do have just a hair more horsepower and torque, but they weigh more. The Raiders are over 700 pounds. But that's also a nice high compression, similar displacement engine, and it's probably the most comparable bike to this that I can think of. There's a few comparable Harleys, but I don't feel like talking about them right now. Go woke, go broke. They're gonna go bankrupt. They messed up bad. But Indian says they will be keeping their production in the US. I'll go into the display a little bit more later because this is a big feature of this bike. It's got a lot of features that I didn't know I wanted on a bike until you ride it for a while, and then you get on a different bike and you realize you don't have them. You don't notice them while you're using it, but you get onto another bike, you know you don't have it. Well, anyway, even on this twisty road, I'm in 6th gear. This thing loves to just chug. Loves to chug. You don't need both hands on the bar. You can scrape peg easily with one hand. Not because it's extremely limited on lean angle. It has quite a bit for a cruiser of this style. It does fairly well. It would be nice to have a slightly higher mid-peg, which the Sport model has more ground clearance. It's basically anything I complain about, most of the things I complain about on this one, they fixed it on the Sport.
But you saw that and said, ooh, pretty color.
Well, they didn't have the Sport when I bought this. The Sport came out after I bought this. Yeah, but I don't like the whole bikini fairing and all that. Even though it does go to the peg fairly quickly, it feels really good on the side of the tire, even when you're going through some bumpy sections. It's surprisingly confidence-inspiring all the way to the peg. Oh, I gotta talk about these mirrors. Indian, they don't shake. They're the perfect amount of zoom. They work so well. The best mirrors out of any bike I have ever ridden. And it's important for me to have good mirrors because I'm always the rider in front whenever I go on group rides.
Yep.
I gotta pay attention to the guys in the back, and they never shake. They're always crystal clear. Good field of view. I simp over these mirrors. Miata. Well, anyway, back to the engine on this thing. It loves to lug. 120 foot-pounds of torque at 2,800 RPM. Night Dragons are a perfect tire for this from the factory. They give you, especially in the rear, it's just enough grip that it hooks up well in a straight line, but you can drift it. You give it all the beans in standard mode, it steps out pretty well. It's very controllable. The rear end stepped out because it's such a high torque, slow revving engine that it doesn't just step out on you. Yeah. It just walks out and it stays. Now Not breaking any speed records today, not trying to drag the pegs the whole time.
Yeah, you won't have any pegs left if you keep dragging them.
Yeah, they've got pretty bad flat spots on them already.
Yeah.
One thing's for sure, she doesn't have the chicken strips. Now the shifter on this thing, I don't have any problems with it neutraling out. You do get a very, very nice feedback in the lever, the foot pedal, whenever you shift. Very positive click. Nice slight audible note whenever it goes into the gear. Never had any problems with false neutrals or the transmission doing anything funky. It does.
He was checking out your bike.
They always do. They always do. I love the colors that Indian does on these. This matte paint looks so good. It is very easy to find neutral in this too, whenever you roll up to the red light.
Oh, it's super easy. It's actually kind of, you'd think you're going to second, but it's neutral.
Yeah, whenever you're coming out of first or coming out of second, either way, never any problems finding neutral on this. This engine's definitely got a sweet spot right there around 2,000 RPM, but you can cruise at 15 to 1800 all day, and it just takes it. It'll pull a hill at 1500 RPM like it's nothing. Doesn't matter what gear you're in. It would be nice if the mid controls were a hair higher. Be able to lean this bike, because it feels completely and utterly stable all the way to the peg. I really think you could get a couple more degrees of lean angle and be just fine. Now the VMAX, it has those higher pegs, so you got a little bit more bend in the knee, but it's still comfortable.
Yeah, I love the seating position on this bike. It is fantastic.
Now I'm 5'8", 180 pounds. If you are on the taller side, this bike might feel a hair cramped. I am 5'8", slight lean forward, good bend in the knee with the mid controls. But it is very comfortable for somebody my size. Even if you're a little bit shorter, I think you'd be fine. These do have a pretty low seat height. I'll throw the seat height up on the screen. Very approachable. We got Miatas.
Miata.
So the bike, you feel a slight vibration in the bars, slight bit in the pegs, not a whole lot in the seat, especially when you're just cruising. But when you get into the power, you can just feel that motor just a little bit. That Thunderstroke engine starts to vibrate a hair just so you know it's running and getting into it. But your standard cruising, it's not going to be wearing you out. They don't shake quite like a Harley does. But once you get it over that 3,000 RPM mark, you start to really feel the thump as you're getting into it. A good rumble to it whenever you get rolling for both exhaust note and being able to actually feel the engine. Now it is really quiet from the factory. You do hear a little bit of engine noise. There's these massive cylinders and it's kind of poking out from under the tank. So you do get a little bit of valve chatter. You can hear whenever you're riding. Nothing crazy. It doesn't sound like those new Sportsters. I do plan on putting a set of just slip-ons on this bike. The Reinhardt 4-inch slip-ons to be exact, because you don't need to change the air filter or tune it. I just want just a hair more sound. Not a lot, just a little bit more rumble. Just enough sound to, mask the sound of the valve train. This is a nice torquey pushrod motor with a surprisingly playful nature.
Ah, the road. You can tell you're in North Carolina.
I'm surprised how well these trikes are handling out here. You boys on these Harley trikes.
Yeah, they seem to be doing really well.
They maintain speed in these corners a hell of a lot better than I thought they would. As far as the aesthetics on this thing go, really the only thing that's questionable is why is the gas cap chrome? The Dark Horse, okay, you went through all this trouble, you got the blacked out bars, the blacked out exhaust, all that. Why does it have a chrome gas cap? I mean, I guess it's a pretty easy thing to swap. It is your standard, like, automotive style gas cap, so changing it would be pretty easy. Yeah, I will say these bikes are more common than I thought they would be after I bought one. just seeing what's out there. Yeah, more people own them than I thought. They don't have as many dealers. There's not as much aftermarket support on these bikes as there is Harleys. Harleys, you've got options for days on what you can do for aftermarket. These are definitely a little bit more limited. But I assume they're definitely going to be picking up here a little bit because, well, this is staying 100% US made. And Harley went woke. You go woke, you deserve to go broke. It is such a smooth engine.
Did you know at the 2nd gen VMAX they didn't perfectly balance out because they wanted it to have that shake and that rumble feeling?
I think every V-twin or V4 should have a slight shake to it, whether they want it or not. It's just part of the experience. Yeah, I'm sure the more popular these Indians get, because they're definitely gaining in popularity, you're going to start to see a lot more aftermarket. Lugging this hill, 1800 RPM. You probably can't tell on video how steep it is, but you just wick it and it pulls. Well, we got a nice downhill. Good time to talk about engine braking. You do get a decent amount. This thing's got 11-to-1 compression. It's just enough to get you slowed down when you want to. Take a little bit off the brakes. It's not like hitting the brakes whenever you let off the gas. They do have it fairly well smoothed out. Something to note, if this thing does throw a code, something happens, it tells you the problem in plain English.
Yeah, that is awesome.
You don't just have to look up a code. I said, oh dude, this exhaust on that Tesla sounds great. It sounds like a sport bike. I can't believe it. I don't know about you, I'm pretty sure they don't have any charging stations up here.
Nope.
Something I didn't mention on this, ground clearance.
No bueno.
It definitely needs more. There are a lot of times where I'm worried about this bike high centering because it has so little ground clearance. Yeah, motor's very low in that frame, giving you a nice, like, real agile feel because the weight's so low. Makes it feel very light, but it's concerning with speed bumps. All right, real sharp, real quick. Miatas.
Miata. Who takes a freaking dually down this road? That's just dangerous.
Look how wide that thing is too. It's wider than stock. Oh, this thing looks sketchy. This guy's got bigger balls than me. Look at that fat ass on that thing. He got the Denali with the fancy tailgate.
I love those.
I do like those tailgates, yeah.
Yeah, I do want one terribly. I really wish this guy would find a pull-off.
Well, I don't think any of these pull-offs are big enough for him.
That is true.
And I sure as hell ain't trying to pass this fat bastard. This thing takes 6 quarts of oil. That's more than most vehicles. 6 quarts.
It takes just as much oil as my truck does.
That's a lot. I'm amazed at how, even all the way to the peg on the side of the tire, you can just about give it all the power.
Yeah, if I do that, I'm wrecking.
Dude, this Neon Rogue's getting it. Miata. My brakes are definitely getting on the little bit of a warm side, but the whole time I've never used more than one finger on the front brake. I can tell they're getting warm with the aggressive riding, but even then, it's not that bad. It does not take a whole lot of brake to get this thing slowed down, even though it weighs 650 pounds.
Your rear shocks are a little bit limited on travel, so if you are going to be doing a significant amount of two-up riding, I recommend looking at maybe the Chieftain or another bike in Indian's lineup, but these, the Scouts, not the best two-up bikes. Fuel capacity, I'll throw it on a screen. Fuel range, I'll throw it on a screen. Screw the editor. We get about 48 miles to the gallon on this hefty big boy. I want to say it's got 11-to-1 compression. So you got to run at least 91 in it. So there is that added cost. You can't run 87 in it due to the high compression. One thing to note, everybody gets on this bike, throws a leg over it, takes it off the stand. They really expect it to feel a lot heavier, but I don't know what Indian did to get the weight so low in this motor. Now, part of that is that limited ground clearance, but it really makes this thing handle effortlessly. You got a nice low seat height, we'll throw that up. I got a good bend in the knee. Even if you're a smaller rider, this is gonna fit you pretty well on 5'8". I don't know how they got the handling on this to tip in the way it does. A bike that weighs this much shouldn't handle the way this does. The steering is so light, so effortless. It just wants to tip into a corner, and it's so confidence inspiring to take all the way to the pegs. I really wish they gave us that extra ground clearance and that extra lean angle, because it feels so stable all the way to the pegs now. It would be nice if we could get a little bit more lean angle out of it. I think the Sport Chief does come with a little bit more. The Sport Chief's got that bikini fairing, a headlight cowl I'm not exactly a fan of. I prefer the more stripped down muscle bike look, but I wish we could get a sportier muscle bike. So the inverted shocks in the rear off of the Sport Chief, maybe even slightly longer ones to get a little bit more ground clearance. The inverted forks up front, dual disc Brembo brakes, that's all stuff that pretty much comes on the Sport Chief that I wish this had. But your Sport Chief, it's got that bikini fairing up front, it's got bar risers with narrower bars. I do really prefer the nice wide drag bar that this Dark Horse comes with. Kind of gets you that slight tip forward, very comfortable when you're cruising, especially at about 55, 60. The air just kind of holds you up a little bit. At least for me at 5'8", I got a slight lean forward. If you're taller, you'll probably be a hair more upright. It's a sitting position that you really can get fairly aggressive with the riding on this bike. So you can really hang some cheeks off and get her into some turns. We do like the headlight. I like to talk about the headlights on everything because we do a lot of night riding. You know, we work night shifts, so that's something that happens a lot. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it is a nice LED projector style headlight. The only thing I wish was a little bit better about the headlight is whenever you're pushing it into corners at night, you've got a nice solid wide beam. And then when you turn on the high beams, it's all in the center. So your upper right and upper left quadrants of your vision, you don't have a whole lot of light. So whenever you're tipping it into corners, kind of pushing it a little bit at night, you can't see as far into the turn as you'd like to. So I wish they'd put a wider high beam on it. That's about all I can say about the headlight. Turn signals look phenomenal. You got the turn signals integrated into the brake lights. It's all sleek, cut down, stripped down. Looks fantastic. Hands down, without question, I think this is one of the best looking bikes ever made. It'll do a rolling burnout through fourth gear without touching the front brake. Just part of the reason I've got 5,000 miles on it and I'm already halfway through my second rear tire because it just wants to light it up everywhere. It's so controllable with the rear end stepped out, especially with the stock Night Dragons on it. The stock tires it comes with, Pirelli Night Dragons, are one of the stickiest cruiser tires you can put on a bike that weighs this much. I can honestly say, taking it all the way to the peg, I've never had any problems with the front end slipping, anything like that. But the stock rear Night Dragon has the perfect amount of grip where you can just step it out and slide it out in a turn, and it doesn't want to just walk all the way out on you and low side. So it just steps out, drifts so well. They did a really good job of getting the weight balance and everything on this bike just perfect for doing fun stuff like that. I do wish you could turn off the rear ABS though. If that was an option we had in the dash, it'd be nice to be able to skid the rear tire a little bit just for some more hooligan stuff. Maybe an option in the future. Now this bike does have the option for cylinder deactivation. So the rear cylinder right here, you have the option to be able to turn it off whenever you're sitting in traffic so you don't heat up the boys as much. whenever you're sitting there at the red light and it's 100 degrees outside. But if we look over to what Chevy had with their cylinder deactivation, it can lead to irregular cylinder wear, stuff like that. So I just turn it off. It's really easy to go into the dash, turn it off. Oh, if it ever throws a code, if anything with the engine ever goes wrong, it tells you what it is on the dash in plain English. You don't need to look up codes. You don't need to bring it into the shop to just figure out what's wrong with your bike. It tells you in plain English. Now, the electronics on this bike is pretty extensive, but they managed to keep the dash very clean, very minimalistic. So you get that old school stripped down look without having just a massive amount of electronics everywhere. But you get your cruise control, it's got your music, elevation change, it's got a lot of information, fuel mileage, range, temperature. Temperature is one of the things that having on a bike, like ambient external temperature outside, I didn't think that I would use as much as I do. I look at it a lot on this, and I really don't notice I look at it a lot until I ride one of my other bikes. And I look down and I go, oh wait, I can't tell how cold it is. What time is it? And it just shows it. Can't do that on some of my other bikes, or it's just not set correctly on my other bikes. Yeah, the ride command system on this, they've really done a good job at getting it refined and dialed in. It does take a good second for it to boot up whenever you first turn the bike on. I wish that was a little bit faster. Screens and displays are fairly easy to navigate, go through all that stuff. It's not overly complicated, it's fairly straightforward. If you got a Cardo, you can actually change the music in your helmet from your bars. You can bring the volume up, volume down. If you get a call on your phone, it shows it on the screen. You get a text, it shows it on the screen and you can read it. You don't really notice in everyday use while using the bike, but definitely nice to have whenever you're out on the road. I know a lot of guys on their bikes will be out there riding, their wife will be blowing up their phone and they just don't know it because their phone's in their bag or their pocket. But this, you can tell whenever she's bitching at you. The gearbox on this, you got a nice 6-speed. I want to say it's electronically limited to 112 miles an hour from the factory. You get a really nice positive feel in the shifter whenever you're shifting. It lets you know it's making it into the next gear. Neutral, really easy to find. Never had any problems sitting at the stoplight. Just, where's neutral? This has always been just one tap, it's right there. Good to go, easy to find. Never had any problems when you're getting into the power, it shifting, no false neutrals, anything like that. Transmission's good and crisp, unlike the VMAX. I want to say the Indian Scouts are faster than these in a straight line. You do feel the 120 foot-pounds of torque, especially on that 3/4 shift. Is when you really notice it seems like it just keeps giving you more torque in the higher gears. A lot of bikes, you'll hop on and you get in there, you shift to a higher gear, it starts slowing down how fast it accelerates. 4th, 5th gear, it just feels like it starts pulling harder and harder every gear you shift. It's nuts. It's called the Thunderstroke. So you know this thing with an exhaust is going to sound great. The 1/16 Thunderstroke engine. It's a little bit quiet with the stock cans. I do plan on putting the 4-inch Reinhardt slip-on exhaust on this. It's, I think, like $800. We've got the stock one on there for now. You do get a fairly decent sound out of it. We get a little sound clip of her. Go behind it. You want to give it a little. Now, you do get a nice, deep, bassy low note out of it, especially whenever you're getting on the throttle. I do wish the valve train was a little bit quieter. You do get a lot of valve train noise, especially with the exhaust being this quiet. But half of your cylinder head is sticking out from under the tank, so you could really hear that whenever you're going down the road and the helmet sounds like a popcorn machine or something. Gotta think this thing's got some big old valves in it. The only aesthetic pieces that we found that we don't like stock from the factory, the chrome gas cap. Why did you put a chrome gas cap on a dark horse bike? You did all this blacking out. black gas cap would probably be pretty cheap to add afterwards. But why didn't you just put it on it from the factory? It's the dark horse. Why is it chrome? The other thing, the rear reflector back here, pretty much everybody that buys these just pops them off. They're just held on with double-sided tape. The only reason I left mine on there is this thing is a blast to take down dirt and gravel roads. Just giving it the beans, just walking that rear end around, drifting it around everywhere. And by having that on there, it's less likely to chip the paint. This paint, oh, this matte green, this metallic matte green is just the most beautiful paint I've ever seen on a bike from the factory. I love this paint job. You take it out in town, the paint gets a lot of attention. People make a lot of comments on it. Everybody just loves how this bike looks. I've asked a lot of Harley guys what they think about it, especially with Harley going woke. A lot of guys are going to be turning to Indian here pretty soon. So they are a great option. All of the Harley guys that are diehard Harley guys, I've asked them what they think, where all they've owned is Harleys. Pretty much the only thing they can say is they buy Harleys because it has that HD badge. They like the company, but the company is what just failed them. Harleys have that nice extra aftermarket support. Now Indian is building aftermarket significantly more than they used to now. Their aftermarket support for throwing parts at these is definitely increasing now. Oh yeah, you do get that nice Harley style look. I do prefer the squared off lines on Indian's tanks over the Harleys. I think that's a wonderful design choice. It looks so good. It does not vibrate quite as much as a Harley. So you don't really feel it much in the bars. You don't feel it too much in the seat pegs. You do get a little bit of vibration whenever you're getting into the throttle, just a nice rumble out of the motor, not like it's gonna shake your teeth out of your head like a Harley. So they are quite a bit smoother. Yeah, just going around town, everybody, they read the tank and it's, oh, that's an Indian, and they want to know more about it. These are 100% made in America. Made and assembled in America. I'm sure they outsource some of the parts from other countries, but Harley's really bad about that too. They're made in Spirit Lake, Iowa. It does start a lot of conversations at the gas station whenever you roll up on this thing and people are like, how do you like it? The amount of Harley guys that come up to me and it's like, how you liking that Indian there, bud? Just the amount of people that just look at this bike and it's like, maybe I made the wrong decision. And I can honestly say, it's phenomenal. I like the license plate holder too. It's off to the side, it's not in the middle in the back, it's off center. And as you're walking by in the shed at night and you kick it, it just folds in so you don't break it. So that's something to note. I've done that a few times. Oh yeah. They let you know you're riding an Indian. Okay, to give you an idea, the amount of places it says Indian, they can charge more for stuff because it says Indian. The grips say Indian. The top of the brake master set, the middle of the mirrors say Indian. The levers? Oh, they missed out on opportunity. They could have put it on the levers. The dash, right at the top, it says Indian. You fire up the dash, it says Indian. You got the thing in the middle of the tank that says Indian. You've got Indian on the rear brake master cylinder. It says Indian on the side of the case. Where else? Where else we got? You got your tank. It says Indian on the frame. You got Indian logo right here. Indian logo on the forks. Indian logo in the headlight. Indian, this part of the dash. It says Indian everywhere. And I like the little touches like that. They look nice. They did pay attention to the details. Oh, and it says it on the seat. Because Indian. They are owned by Polaris, so that's something to know. I haven't really been a huge Polaris guy, a fan of like the side-by-sides, the four-wheelers. Haven't been a fan of those. I know a lot of people out there love them, but you either love or hate the side-by-sides. The quality on these is phenomenal. There's way less seals than the Harley motors. I think there's less than half as many seals as a Harley. Much less likely to leak on you. It does take 6 quarts of oil. 6 with the 116. Now if you get a bike with the 111 in it, it takes 4.5 quarts of oil. They did a really good job of getting the the motor on this to look phenomenal. That's something I'm not a fan of on the brand new Scouts they just released. The engine doesn't have a whole lot of character to it. I think it's honestly kind of ugly. Now the old Scouts, I loved the engine on those. The old Scouts, I loved. I was actually gonna buy one of the Scouts when I went into the dealership and found this gem. But I started looking into this, and they made everything so simplistic. They look very easy to work on. The brake master is directly mounted to the brake lever. There's no linkage or anything like that, so you get great brake feel. They really paid attention to the details and maintenance on it later down the road. I want to say the belt life on these is like 20,000 miles, something like that. Pretty damn good, and most people bring their bike in at that point, get the belt checked, they say their belt's perfectly fine, and they run it another 10, 15,000 miles. Mine, I hope lasts that long. Now, with all the burnouts and all that kind of stuff I've done on this bike, zero belt wear that we can see. So that's something to note. They definitely hold up, they're durable. It's very hard for us to find stuff we didn't like about this bike. I was thinking I was gonna get it, ride it, just have a few things that I found that just really annoyed me. And I haven't been able to do that with this bike. It was very, very hard to find things that I didn't like about it. They did a very good job. It's a very well-rounded machine. Doesn't leak oil because it's not a Harley. Some people said the clutch was kind of heavy. I can't operate the clutch with one finger on this bike. It's a large engine. It's a 116. Compared to my buddy's Sportster 1200, this is a featherweight. We got nice controllable clutch feel, good slip zone, easy to operate. I'd say even if you're a less experienced rider, you could ride one of these. You got a good low seat height. They're very controllable, so easy to turn. You could, in theory, get one of these as your first bike. Now, I wouldn't want to do that because it's a $20,000 bike, and if you lay it down, you're gonna be footing that bill and it's gonna suck. Oh yeah. Yeah, you can go for miles down the road on this thing without touching the bars. It goes wherever you think it should go. It's just so effortless. At 120 foot-pounds of torque, you could head up a hill in 5th gear at 1200 RPM and it damn near just idles right up the hill. It pulls like a freight train. That torque is really the selling point on one of these engines. And I really wish we had more sportier bikes out that were more torque-oriented motors, less high-revving, crazy, like ZX4RR motors that rev to 16,000 RPM. I wish we had more options out there for sportier, good handling bikes with more of a torque-oriented platform. Now, I like those other bikes that rev to the moon. They're good, they're fun. I just wish we had the option. I think they would sell pretty well. Unprofessional. Alrighty, we're gonna fire up the dash on this thing, give you a rough idea. It takes a second to start up. I wish that was a little bit quicker for sure.
Did you break it?
I did not break it. There it goes. See how long that took? It does that sometimes. Sometimes it fires up quick. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But the dash itself, all the displays look great. All that looks phenomenal. You got a lot of good information going on in here. Let's get up in there. Give you a quick look. The navigation worked pretty well until you go into some really remote areas, and then it kind of cuts out. So it does have standalone navigation on it. You don't need to connect your phone for that. And if my phone was connected, it would have a screen for the music as one of those selections. But you got this option for a dash. You've got this option for the dash. It's trying to facial track the Indian on the tank. Alrighty. Thanks for watching Redneck Reviews. We'll see you next time. Oh, get the thing going.
There's so many 86s.
Why does that not have a bumper?
They
Car
handle
phone
extremely
fee
well.
fray.
He probably, yes, it is.
Oh,
He
that
probably
looked
ripped
nice.
it off. Yeah. Okay, don't let him hear this, but I actually really like that it's fuel injected because the carbs suck.